Absolutely. Let me tell you now what we are sure about. Just like Yvonne was sure of what we needed to do, now I'm also sure what we need to talk about. The county governments. The last 5 years or so, over 1 trillion shillings has come to you via devolution. Do you feel the 1 trillion shillings effect around you? Is your governor working? Do you see something happening in your county government? Because there are some that have been working and some that have not. In fact, after the national government corruption, the next area of focus should be at the county level, because the essence of devolution was to bring you power and resources. Is the power coming, Joe?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag, quite frankly. You can't make a generalization because the counties are so different. One, in where they were coming from. They are also different in the manner in which they are led. But I think there are a few that stand out for various reasons. Some the wrong ones, others the absolutely right ones. I think Makueni has been mentioned many times. And for me, as a student of governance and public participation, I'm actually quite intrigued by what he's been able to do. And it seems to me that the success that is talked about in Makueni has a lot to do with the ability of the leaders to listen to the people, because there is always this idea that I am the leader. I mean, Professor Kibwana is a professor, so he knows a lot of things, but he sits down there taking his buffalo and some soda and whatever and listening to this. And I was amazed at how the whole structure is organized, where there's a village sort of council or whatever it is called, and these people say this is what we want, then they have a representative who takes it to the next level, and it goes all the way up to the governor's office, so that no one is just coming up with ideas that they think the people need. Yet you might find that you think it's electricity they need, but they don't even have houses that can accommodate power. So I think that for me, the case of Makueni is a testament to how useful it is for leaders to be humble enough to know that they have employers who are the people, and that they don't always know everything. And that is something that I think has stood out in that place. And you can see that even the sort of projects that they've come up with are things that address very basic questions that they
But Jamila, they keep talking about vipindre. I've heard that term several times. Vipindre, meaning sideshows or the drama and so on and so forth. That when you see Professor Kibwana holding a baby or sitting in some village or under a tree, that it's part of those vipindre. But even then, maybe something is also working there in the course of those.
He's a politician at the end of the day. The optics are important, but I think on the ground you will actually see that there is something happening.
You know that recently, like 46 counties sent representatives to Makueni recently for benchmarking conference because of how successful the county is being run. And in fact, soon after that, Governor of Kirinyaga, Anne Waiguru, sent back 3 of her officers to actually spend some time in Makueni to see how it works. They have a project for water tanks. They have what they call the Tereka Fund, which is a revolving fund. They have funding for education, for both primary and secondary. They have a funding for, of course, the healthcare there works. How many times have we even had the conferences being held in Makueni just to see how this is working for them? So he can be a politician. He can take pictures carrying babies. He can sit under a tree drinking milk and be photographed, and it's all over, but it's working for the people of Makueni. In fact, people from Ukambani say, can he now, because he's finishing his 2nd term, can we borrow him and he becomes the governor for another county?
And
so he can
I just add to some of those. That's where I was coming to, Yvonne, because the question that many people keep asking, and I also probably would want to ask it, is it that Kivutha has more money or can access more money than his colleague governors? That's why you can see tangible things happening, yet some counties that receive more money than he does, zero man.
I think, Joe, what you were talking about being a student of governance, from his days, this is something Kivutha Kibwana took from his days in the civil society movement, in Ufungamano, just understanding what people want. To add to those accolades, a milk processing plant, a fruit processing plant for mangoes. I think right now it might be closed because of the mango season, but it's usually reopened at that time. Universal health coverage, where the Financial Times of the UK is terming it a success. Ambassadors from Nordic countries are actually terming it a success. And to think that this county was almost being dissolved. You remember?
Yeah.
During the last one by the Mohamed Nyauga-led team. And this is the one moment when the president stood firm and said, I will not. If you remember, he actually rejected Mohamed Nyauga's team report, saying this will not be done. This is the one thing that this does. For sure, they don't have more money than anyone else. But I think the success in Makueni also shines a spotlight on members of county assembly and how they can actually bring down a county by holding the governor hostage, by saying we will not pass this law unless you give us this, because that is exactly what they did in the first term. Now that he has a county assembly that is cooperating and they're working together, I mean, look at what's happening. So we should actually start to look at MCAs and the role they can or cannot play in building up a country.
Francis, this is turning into a praise festival for Makueni County, and allow me to join now because there's a lot. There's a lot to celebrate about Makueni, but also the story of Kivutha Kibwana. Just to take you back in 1997, and actually prior to that, late 1996, 1997 and 1998, Kivutha Kibwana was a very vocal figure leading the NCEC, National Constitution Executive Committee, and then Council.
Yes.
At some point, he rose in stature to the pinnacle of what would be regarded, at least in the optics, as the official leader of opposition. He was Moi's counterpart on the question of what happens to the new...
They actually had the Katiba to Itakayo. They had all this a draft constitution in many different languages.
Yes. So I'm bringing this story because that was the highest point he had reached before becoming governor. His performance as governor has brought back the old Kivutha Kibwana that we knew, who is very connected to the people, who is very humble. I think, Joe, the humility you're talking about is understated. He's very, very humble, and you see those pictures, you see him engaging, and also on public participation, which is a constitutional requirement. They are doing.
I'm trying to dance, even though he's not very good at it.
No, he's a very poor dancer. And now, Francis, you're now seeing from this desk, and then you go to the social media, there are calls that he should run for president. Of course, it's a call he should resist.
I agree.
He should resist that call.
Why?
Don't run for president, Kivutha Kibwana, if you did not intend to run for president.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even as the guys praise him and you tell him not to vie for the presidency, I'm sure there's some quote-unquote bad boys in devolution who probably would not even think about running for that presidency. Waititi. Move the rivers, not the buildings, and so on and so forth. But there's some governors who have been on the spotlight this year for obvious...
Did you forget about Nairobi? Oh,
we're heading there. It's coming. For obvious bad reasons. They haven't... There's some guys who are not good guys like Kivutha. You call them bad boys of devolution this year, 2018, Joe.
I find it quite intriguing personally that you have people, for example, I mean, we have a governor in Nairobi. He's an interesting person. He can speak in many different accents when he chooses. But he represents something that I think is unique to the politics of this country, perhaps, but I've seen it in some places around the world lately. But it speaks to this brand of politics that responds to our most basic instincts as Kenyans. This is someone, if you're talking about Governor Sonko, for example, he's been a successful politician and I think a terrible leader. He's a successful politician to the extent that he's able to get people to vote for him, and they vote for him on the basis of very basic instincts that we have. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine who told me of this lady who had, in the last election, not this past one, had traveled all the way from Ugenya to come and vote for him when he was running for Senate. And then they were asked, like, what is the problem? They said, no, this guy, when my brother died, he's the one who helped us. We were stuck with the coffin and everything, and we couldn't even bring our brother home. Can you imagine what would have happened? Because it's very important in that part of the world for people to be buried at home. And he knew things, he knows things like that. So he comes and tells us, oh yeah, there was a big problem here in Pangani. They look at all these fetuses and these babies and everything. So I have personally come and donated my cooler. You see, and I mean, we later realized where the cooler came from, but politically people will say like, wow. So there are people who say this is a really nice guy, you know, look at what he's done. But if you look at now the actual impact of that thing on a bigger scale in terms of what a governor, for example, of a county is, not least a county such as Nairobi is supposed to do, then you find actually there isn't much substance. There is too much. Where I come from, they say producing too much smoke really doesn't mean there is some cooking.
Or some fire. But let me, there's also one Zakaria Okoth Obado. Man, oh man.
This year has been one I think you would like to forget. But he's out on bail.
It's about to get worse next year.
It's about to get worse
once
next
the trial actually begins, mid next year.
He's been in jail. He's been denied bail several times, and he was finally released, only to be arrested again, and finally to be released on bail. He cannot go how many meters?
Yeah, 120.
He's actually very lucky that the constitution changed, because in the old constitution, the bail rights will not be guaranteed. He is a murder suspect, and he would still be in jail. But allow me to talk about Francis Waititu, the governor.
Ferdinand
Waititu.
Please don't confuse Francis and Ferdinand.
Yes, this is sorry.
Why do I think that was deliberate?
But although we share a county.
Francis Gaturi and Ferdinand Waititu. Now, Ferdinand Waititu, this year has seen a lot of comments coming out of Kiambu, where residents are saying, did we make a mistake? I think there's a lot of soul searching in Kiambu going on right now because of what he turned out to be as governor. Waititu never changed his politics. He's still the same person that was member of parliament for Embakasi and at some point member of parliament for Kabete. With the same character, he moves to a higher office. He moves to a more complex office, an executive office that is about policy, and continues to play the same old politics. And Kiambu is saying, you need to remind me in Kikuyu, Afadhali Kabogo, I think there was...
Kafa Kafogo.
Kafa Kafogo.
That's what people have been saying.
Kafa Fogo.